whether it's prayer, whether it's fasting. We've got to know how to use that tool to do some advancing. I wish I had a witness in here. In the kingdom of God. I must submit today that all of us in here, we have weapons that we do not know that God has given to us. But once we figure out that we do have something in our possession to fight the enemy with, God would tap us on our shoulder and said, Williams, I already gave you something to fight with, but you got to make sure that you put it to work. I've got to submit today that chapter 14 opens up a whole different story here. Jonathan said, well, these people that have these tools, they're afraid to fight. They ran in caves and they hid from fighting. Can I drop a footnote right there very quickly? If you're around folk that's going to run when it's time to do battle, you might want to change your surroundings. Is there anybody here know some folk that when it's time to fight, when it's time to go to battle, they run and they hide in their caves? I want to be around some folk that's going to stand firm and say, for God I live and for God I will die. Is there anybody here feel like that? You want to be around some folk that's going to say, I will serve the Lord until the day I die. I'm on the battlefield. I'm not going to be very long for my Lord. Jonathan in chapter 14, he said, well, me and my armor bearer, we got to escape from amongst these people that are sleeping, from amongst the people that do not want to go to battle. We got to get away from these individuals because that's going to keep us from getting victory. Somebody say victory. Somebody say victory. Somebody say victory. Jonathan said, well, I can't fight. I can't fight with no cowards. I can't go to battle with weak-minded individuals. And I got to tell us today that grace, we have come a mighty long way. When folk ran and hid in caves, it was you and Pastor Wright and myself that said, we're going to fight regardless. Is there anybody here? You just want to fight regardless. You gave your tithe and your offering. You gave your prayers. You came in here and you sung a song. You came in here and you danced. And you did exactly what God wanted you to do with what you had in your possession. Jonathan now, he said, well, let's go down here to the garrisons and make sure that the tools that we have to fight. When you are trying to advance, one thing that you must know is you must have a strategy. That there's no army in the world that will not try to fight without a strategy. Somebody say a strategy. Say if you're going to win, you got to have a strategy. If you're going to defeat the enemy, you got to have a strategy. If you're going to move forward, you got to have if you're going to fight strong, you got to have if you want to cut Satan down, you got to have if you want to defeat Satan, you got to have Jonathan said, well, these cowards, they don't want to fight, so you and myself, we will now advance by ourselves. Verse 12, and the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and his armor bearer said, come up to us and we will show you a thing. But the enemy is now calling Jonathan and the armor bearer out. He said, now you come to me. And I've got to submit today that in each and every one of us, in this day and time, Satan had called us out. Is there anybody here can witness and testify and wave your hand and say, Satan has called me out? But guess what? He's called out the wrong person, because I've been with God too long for you for you to call me out. Is there anybody here you glad today that Satan called you out? Because if it had not, you had somebody here, been for the Lord on my side. So Jonathan said, now they're calling me out, and now we got to go up to them. It would be a better thing if they did call us out, because the Lord would promise us that these things will be in our possession. I've got to submit to all of us today that when God promised you something, you better rest for sure that it's going to come to pass. Thank you very much. Give yourself a high five. It's going to come to pass. Jonathan said, now I've got God on my side, and I got my armor bearer riding with me. One thing that you must know is that you got to have somebody riding with you. Which I had a witness in here. You know, some folk would fall by the wayside if they hear that the enemy has power to destroy. But God says, I'm with you always. I had somebody here, always and even unto the end of the world. And I got to submit to you today that Jonathan said, now here we come. You're going to call us out, but we're going to come anyway. It's only two of us. But if you will look behind us with the spiritual mind frame, you would see a whole army of angels. Wish I had somebody here following me. And behind the angels, here come God with all the power, the same power that breathed into our nostrils. I wish I had somebody here. The same power that formed woman out of the rib of a man. Wish I had somebody in here that knows the same God that made you and I to what we ought to take. Oh God, and here Jonathan said, now they're calling us out. So since they're calling us out, the God that we serve, he's now going to help us advance. Oh God, and here on today, when you get weary in well-doing, God would tap you on your shoulder and said, I have a strategy. I wish I had a witness in here. If you only trust in me and lean not to your own understanding, in all of your ways acknowledge God, and he will. I wish I had somebody here that knows that he will. He'll direct your path. He may not come when you want him, but whenever he comes, he's always on time. Jonathan said, the God I serve, he's an on-time God. And so he said, now let us advance a little further. Since the enemy have tried to confront us, he said, oh, well, now Jonathan said unto his armor bearer, he said, well, come up after me. For the Lord had delivered them into the hand of Israel. Jonathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet. What I see here in verse 13 is I see Pastor Wright. He's advancing with his hands and with his feet. And you know, when you climb something, that means that you got to do some crawling. Do I have a witness in here? You got to do some crawling with your hands and with your knees and feet. That has been a long time coming, but you decided to advance with a strategy. You said, well, if 13 folk don't go with me. You said, well, if 20 folk don't go with me, I'll go all by myself. Can I get a witness here?